I'm not returning. I've found someone far more suitable, and have already moved my possessions into storage. My name is Arthur Miller, 57 years of age, and I'm currently staring at my mobile device in the kitchen of my Omaha condominium at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. My wife, Evelyn, was supposed to be on the 5th day of a girls' getaway to Sedona. A text message arrived, accompanied by a screenshot of an electronic funds transfer. A sum of $212,000 had been shifted from our joint savings account into her personal account. Extended weekend excursions, new apparel she never wore in my presence, and phone calls abruptly ceasing upon my entry into a room. I perceived everything. I'm a forensic accountant. Identifying discrepancies is my professional expertise. Yet, I remained silent. Perhaps that was my initial error. Or perhaps my first mistake was marrying someone who viewed my profession as merely spreadsheets and tedious figures. Best of luck. Then, I contacted my sibling David. Remember that contingency plan we devised 5 years ago? I inquired when he answered. It's time. Are you certain? He asked. Yes, I responded firmly. She's just made her move. I disconnected the call and gazed at the wedding photograph adorning the wall. It was the sole image in the condo still featuring both of us. I should have noticed that too. I encountered Evelyn Reed at a university alumni gathering for the University of Nebraska. I was 39, recently divorced from a brief first marriage, and entirely focused on expanding my forensic accounting practice. Evelyn was 35, vivacious, driven, and utterly unconcerned with my career path. I don't need to comprehend the specifics, she'd declare whenever I attempted to explain a case. As long as you earn enough for us to live comfortably. We wed after a year of courtship. I assisted her in establishing her Pilates studio, entirely financing the enterprise from my savings. When she desired a larger residence and a more prestigious neighborhood, I assented. When she craved luxury vehicles and extravagant vacations, I simply nodded and signed the necessary documents. My father had once cautioned me. We were repairing his deck, and he paused, hammer in hand. Son, he said cautiously, I've observed your wife expends a considerable amount of your money. Just ensure she appreciates the effort you invest in earning it. I dismissed his remark, but his words lingered. 6 years into our marriage, I discreetly restructured my assets. Nothing unlawful, merely protective measures. I formed 2 limited liability companies, established trusts, invested in digital currencies, and maintained offshore accounts for international clients. Evelyn was aware of our joint checking and savings accounts, but nothing beyond that. I observed her increasing involvement in fitness influencer networks. Her Instagram following swelled into the tens of thousands. She commenced taking trips with her wellness community. Initially weekends, then entire weeks. You wouldn't appreciate it, she'd say. It's all Pilates discussions and juice cleanses. Last Christmas, she overlooked my birthday. When I mentioned it the following day, she presented me with an expensive timepiece, stating, I've simply been exceptionally busy with the studio expansion. I accepted the gift, but that night, I finalized the paperwork for my contingency plan. The warning signs were evident. I simply refused to acknowledge the complete picture. The morning following her message, I awoke early and prepared coffee as always. Habits are tenacious, even when one's world implodes. I logged into my primary financial management system, custom designed for my practice but adapted for personal use. With a few keystrokes, I initiated the contingency protocol David and I had formulated years earlier. First, I froze all joint accounts and credit cards. Then, I triggered a fraud alert on the $212,000 transfer, leveraging my banking contacts to expedite the process. I transmitted documentation substantiating financial misconduct to my legal counsel, along with instructions to file for divorce immediately. Then, I contacted my mother. Evelyn has left me, I stated plainly. She appropriated the funds and removed my belongings while ostensibly on vacation. My mother remained silent for a moment. I'm sorry, Arthur, she finally said, but I can't say I'm surprised. What are you planning to do? What I've been preparing for years, I replied. Protect what's mine. An hour later, my phone illuminated with Evelyn's name. I rejected the call. 10 more calls followed. Then a text message. What in the world have you done? The money's vanished, and my cards are inactive. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility specified in her text message. Using the access code she'd provided, I retrieved 2 boxes containing my clothing and laptop, the remainder of my possessions, family photographs, books, mementos from my father, were nowhere to be found. At that moment, a resolve hardened within me. This was no longer solely about finances. It was about 15 years discarded without a second thought. It was about someone believing they could erase me from my own life. I stopped at a cafe and opened my laptop. Utilizing financial databases accessible only to licensed investigators, I compiled all available information on Marcus Hayes. The fitness influencer Evelyn had been tagging in photographs for months. The someone better she'd mentioned. My suspicions were confirmed. Marcus's gym business was heavily leveraged. 3 maxed-out business credit cards, an unaffordable lease, and Evelyn had co-signed a car loan with him 2 months prior. I closed my laptop and drove to a hotel. For the first time in years, I felt utterly certain about the necessary course of action. I was no longer angry. I was focused. Monday morning, I entered my office, as if nothing had transpired. My assistant, Patricia, looked up, surprised. "Arthur, I assumed you'd be taking time off. Evelyn called 3 times already." "Did she?" I responded, not posing a question. "She sounded distressed, claiming a misunderstanding with your accounts, and needing to reach you urgently." I nodded. "If she calls again, instruct her to contact my attorney." By noon, Evelyn had escalated from calls to an in-person appearance. The receptionist buzzed my office. "Your wife is here. She's quite insistent." I sighed and proceeded to the lobby. Evelyn stood there, designer sunglasses perched atop her head, her yoga attire impeccably coordinated. She smiled upon seeing me, the same smile she'd employed for 15 years when desiring something. "Arthur, there's been a significant misunderstanding with the bank," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "All our accounts are frozen." "Not a misunderstanding," I replied quietly. "You transferred funds without authorization. The bank flagged it as fraudulent activity." Her smile faltered. "It was our joint account. I'm your wife. You're my soon-to-be ex-wife, who depleted our savings while informing me you'd moved out and found someone new. That's textbook financial misconduct." Her voice dropped to a hiss. "You cannot do this to me. I've already made deposits on a new residence. I've made commitments." "To Marcus Hayes?" "Yes, I'm aware of those commitments." Her face blanched. "You're investigating me. I'm merely protecting myself from fraud." "You'll fight this," she snapped. "I deserve half of everything." I looked at her steadily. "Half of what's in those accounts?" "Certainly. But you appear to believe that's all there is." She blinked, confused. "What are you referring to?" "You'll discover in the discovery process," I said, then turned and returned to my office. That afternoon, I received an email from Evelyn's newly retained attorney demanding immediate access to all financial records and threatening to expose irregularities in my accounting practice if I didn't comply. It was an amateurish maneuver, a threat lacking substance. I forwarded it to my attorney with a single line, "Proceed as planned." By evening, Evelyn had rallied mutual acquaintances to her cause. My phone overflowed with messages questioning my vindictiveness and control. No one questioned her whereabouts over the past week or her companion. No one inquired about the appropriated funds. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I went to the gym, not Evelyn's studio or Marcus's ostentatious fitness center, but the modest community center I'd frequented for years. I lifted weights until my arms trembled, then drove back to my hotel room. The trap was closing, but not around me. 3 days later, my attorney called. "We've uncovered something intriguing," she said. "Evelyn has been siphoning funds from your joint account for over a year. Small transfers initially, then larger ones." "To where?" I asked, though I already knew. "Multiple accounts, some to her personal savings, but mostly to a business LLC registered to Marcus Hayes, nearly $80,000 in total. And she utilized your joint funds as the source." "Yes, meaning we can add financial infidelity to the divorce filing." I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't surprised, but the confirmation felt like a blow to the gut. Evelyn hadn't merely left me for another person. She'd been planning it for over a year, funding her departure and her new boyfriend's business with my money. That night I received a text from an unknown number. "You need to back off. Evelyn deserves better than you. Don't make this more unpleasant than necessary. Marcus Hayes' direct involvement." Interesting. I drove to my brother's residence the following morning. David worked in digital security, the perfect complement to my financial expertise. We'd collaborated on cases before, but this was different. "I need everything you can find on Harmon Fitness LLC," I instructed him. "Bank records, loans, Credit applications. Everything. David raised an eyebrow. Legal channels only. Right, absolutely, I confirmed. We're simply connecting publicly available information more rapidly than most. 3 hours later, we had our answer. Marcus Hayes wasn't merely in debt, he was insolvent. His social media portrayed success, but his business was failing. The new equipment, the expansion, the promotional events, all funded through high-risk loans, and more recently, Evelyn's investments. But there was something else, something Evelyn couldn't have known. The loan specifies joint responsibility with her spouse. They leveraged your marital status to secure more favorable terms. I stared at the screen. She jeopardized my assets for his loan without my knowledge. Exactly. David agreed. And there's more. 3 credit cards, a car lease, and the new commercial space rental, all co-signed by Evelyn, all leveraging your marital assets as security. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, children played in the adjacent yard, oblivious to the complexities of the adult world. She has no idea what she's done, I finally said, and neither does he. The following morning, I met with my attorney and presented everything we'd uncovered. I want to act swiftly, I told her, before they realize what's happening. She reviewed the documents and nodded. We'll file for emergency asset protection today. The loan fraud alone is sufficient to freeze everything until the divorce is settled. That afternoon, I drove to Harmon Fitness. The gym was sleek and modern, with motivational quotes painted on the walls, and Marcus's face plastered across the entrance. Inside, young adults in expensive workout attire took selfies between half-hearted sets. Marcus spotted me immediately. He was taller in person, with the artificial tan and capped teeth of someone who'd built their career on appearance. He approached, hand extended, smile perfectly calibrated. You must be Arthur, he said. Evelyn mentioned you. I'm sure she has, I replied, declining his handshake. We need to talk privately. His smile faltered, but he led me to his office, glass-walled, visible to everyone, but soundproof. What can I do for you? He asked, closing the door. I placed a folder on his desk. This is every financial document connecting you to Evelyn. Loans, credit cards, leases, all co-signed using our marital assets as security. He picked up the folder cautiously. I don't understand. It's simple. Evelyn used our marriage to secure your business loans. Now we're divorcing, and those guarantees are invalid. The color drained from his face as he flipped through the pages. These are all legitimate business arrangements between Evelyn and me. Perhaps I conceded, but the banks approved them based on our combined assets and income. Assets she no longer has access to. He closed the folder. What do you want? Nothing from you, I replied. I merely thought you should know what's coming. The banks will soon demand repayment of those loans. Evelyn said you were wealthy, he said, his voice hardening. That money isn't an issue for you. Money has never been the issue, I retorted. Trust was. I stood to depart but paused at the door. One more thing. When Evelyn moved out, she took items of sentimental value to me. Family photographs, my father's watch, things money can't replace. He stared at me for a protracted moment. I'll see what I can do. I nodded and left. The next day, a courier delivered a box to my hotel. Inside were the missing photographs, my father's watch and other personal items. No note was included. That same afternoon, my attorney confirmed the emergency asset protection had been granted. All shared assets would remain frozen until the divorce was finalized. I logged into my financial management system and reviewed the alerts. Evelyn had attempted to access our frozen account 17 times in the past 24 hours. She'd also tried to open a new line of credit using our home as collateral. Denied. My phone illuminated with her name again. This time I answered. What have you done? She demanded. Her voice trembling. The bank called in Trey's loans. All of them. They're seizing the equipment tomorrow. That's unfortunate, I said calmly. This is vindictive, Arthur. You're destroying him to get back at me. I'm not doing anything to him. I'm simply protecting myself from fraud. You used our marriage to secure his loans without my knowledge or consent. That's illegal. We can resolve this, she pleaded, her voice softening abruptly. Come home. We'll talk. 15 years of marriage, and she still believed I could be manipulated so easily. There's nothing to resolve, I responded. The divorce will proceed. The fraud investigation will continue. And Marcus will learn an expensive lesson about due diligence. I ended the call and blocked her number. That night I slept better than I had in months. 3 weeks later I sat in a conference room as Evelyn and her attorney arrived for our court-ordered mediation. She appeared weary, her designer attire and flawless makeup unable to conceal the strain. Her attorney spoke first. My client is willing to be reasonable regarding the division of assets despite the aggressive tactics employed thus far. My attorney smiled politely. That's encouraging because there's been a development. She slid a document across the table. The bank has concluded its fraud investigation. They've determined that Evelyn forged Arthur's signature on multiple loan documents, using their marital assets as collateral without his knowledge. Evelyn's attorney scanned the document, his face paling. We'll require time to review this. Certainly, my attorney responded. But you should be aware that the bank has already referred the matter to the district attorney. This meeting is a courtesy before criminal charges are filed. Evelyn stared at me, eyes wide. Criminal charges? Arthur, you can't be serious. I met her gaze unflinchingly. I didn't file the charges, the bank did. That's what happens when you commit loan fraud. Her attorney whispered something in her ear. She shook her head vehemently. If Ms. Reed is willing to sign our proposed settlement agreement today, my attorney continued, Arthur is prepared to provide a statement to the bank that could mitigate the criminal implications. He won't press charges for the theft of personal property or the unauthorized transfer from the joint account. I watched as Evelyn's meticulously constructed world crumbled. She'd anticipated anger, jealousy, perhaps even pleading. She hadn't anticipated consequences. The settlement is generous, I stated quietly. You retain your Pilates studio, which was always profitable. You keep your car and personal belongings. You receive no alimony, and you assume responsibility for the debts you incurred in my name. Untrez? She asked, her voice barely audible. Mr. Hayes' financial difficulties are his own concern, my attorney replied. But without your husband's assets backing those loans, I understand the bank has already initiated repossession proceedings. Evelyn signed the papers without further argument. As we left the conference room, she grasped my arm. I never imagined you'd fight back like this, she said. You always just acquiesced. That was my choice, I replied. Just as this was your choice. I walked away without looking back. A month later, I vacated the hotel and moved into a modest house near downtown Omaha. Nothing extravagant, just a craftsman-style home with good bones requiring some renovation. The kind of project that would keep my hands occupied and my mind engaged during the evenings. I learned through mutual friends that Evelyn had relocated to Montana to make a fresh start. Her Instagram displayed mountain vistas and inspirational quotes about new beginnings. Marcus's gym had been sold to a national chain and relocated to Las Vegas to expand his brand. Neither mentioned what had transpired. People rarely publicize their failures. My brother David stopped by one Saturday to assist me in installing new kitchen cabinets. Heard anything from Evelyn? He asked as we measured for the hinges. No, I replied, and I don't expect to. You know, you could have taken her for everything. The fraud charges alone would have guaranteed that. I shrugged. What would be the point? She's no longer my concern. We worked in comfortable silence for a time. The rhythm of measuring, cutting, and mounting created a meditative state. I'm considering taking some time off, I said eventually. Perhaps drive to Wisconsin, do some fishing at the cabin. Dad would appreciate that, David replied. You haven't been there since he passed. That evening, after David departed, I sat on my back porch with a glass of bourbon. The neighborhood was quiet, with only occasional canine barks or children's laughter breaking the silence. Different from the upscale community Evelyn had insisted upon. More genuine. Somehow. I reflected on the past 15 years. How I'd allowed someone else to define my life, my self-worth. How I'd observed the warning signs but chosen to ignore them. How, when the moment arrived, I'd been prepared because a part of me had always known this day would come. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I simply felt free. The next morning I contacted my office and informed them I'd be taking 2 weeks of leave. Then I packed my truck, secured the house and headed north. No itinerary, no expectations, just the open road. And for the first time in years, no invisible ledger of resentments to reconcile.